switched on during the meeting, please, in order to be seen and heard whilst participating in the council business. In addition, when asked to raise your hand, if members who are virtually viewing this meeting could raise your hand, your electronic hand, and for members who are in the chamber, just raise your hands. On to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Can I take any declarations of interest, please? Councillor Percy.
Yeah, as I indicated in pre-briefing, just wanted to declare I'm a trustee of Talbot Community Library. Libraries are mentioned in the report, and I've got a question on libraries as well, so just for transparency, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Are there any other declarations of interest, please? I cannot see any, so we'll move on to the business ahead of us. Agenda item 3, which is the corporate strategy for 2025 to 2028. Noelwyn, would you like to provide a brief summary of an update of the corporate strategy, please?
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Yeah, so the current corporate plan was approved in July 2024, and following feedback from all scrutiny committees during the year, we felt that there was a need to review and strengthen the way we articulated how we were delivering against our 4 wellbeing objectives. So we felt that we needed to streamline the content of the document to be clearer and more concise, and simplify the way we also presented our key priorities, ensuring in greater accountability in terms of the measures that we were using and clarity of purpose. In terms of some of the major changes, obviously, firstly, we are referring to this now as a corporate strategy, not as a corporate plan, so it becomes more of a strategic document. We've provided infographics in there about Neath Talbot, around the structure of the council, our workforce at NPTU, council budget and finances, and we've also moved to having one overarching vision for Neath Talbot Council. If you remember, previously there was a vision for each of the wellbeing objectives, so we've moved to having that one overarching vision for the next 20 years. What we've also included in there are 4 key cross-cutting areas. So we've got the cost of living, poverty prevention, climate change and decarbonisation, Welsh language, culture and heritage, and equalities, diversity and inclusion. Now, those are 4 key areas for the authority, and they cannot be delivered in isolation. They are delivered cross-directorate, and everybody across every service area contributes to the delivery of the key priorities within those cross-cutting areas. So those are also now included within the revised corporate strategy. The corporate strategy is underpinned by heads of service delivery plans, and they will be renewed on an annual basis. So every year, through those heads of service delivery plans, you will see the actions that the services will be undertaking to deliver the 4 wellbeing objectives. We've also introduced, and this was following feedback from Audit Wales, we've now introduced a suite of service user perspectives, and this has been raised by members as well over the time. And I think that really does strengthen this corporate strategy. The service user perspectives are coming from the residents survey. Now that is being undertaken by Data Cymru and is part of WLGA's improvement plan network. So it's not work that we are generating and creating ourselves. The work is done by Data Cymru. However, we will get on an annual basis the results of that resident survey, and we can and have contributed towards some of the questions within that survey. And I think what that will give us over time is an understanding of the trajectory of performance and improvement that we are making as an authority, and based on what the service users think of us as a council. So that's really key. The other key area as well is we have included some of the national indicators. So in terms of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, the 7 goals that are in place, there are a suite of 15 indicators at a national level, and we've included the more pertinent ones within our corporate strategy as well, demonstrating that we are looking outside of the boundary of Neath Talbot to see how we are contributing to the bigger national picture as well on an all Wales basis. In terms of the monitoring of the corporate strategy moving forward, each of the heads of service delivery plans will come before you and before each of the various scrutiny committees in turn, and they will be monitored Q1 and Q3, and you will get a half-year report on the delivery of the corporate strategy and at the end of year. So there will be plenty of opportunity for you to question and challenge and hold us to account with regards to how we are delivering on the corporate strategy priorities. And I'm more than happy and welcome your scrutiny as members now of the new revised corporate strategy. Diolch.
Many thanks, Noelwyn. Hopefully it's answered a few questions that are coming up, but we'll now move to members' questions. I've had an indication initially from Councillor Percy. He's got a couple, so what we're going to do is we're going to run through them one at a time, if that's okay. So over to you, Councillor Percy.
Yeah, diolch Cadeirydd, thank you. And bear with me, I'm feeling a little under the weather as well, so hopefully I'll be able to get through this without any trouble. Thanks, Noelwyn, for the introduction there. My first question was around service user perspectives and the resident survey. So you've covered part of that. I've done a bit of quick Googling as you were talking as well, just to understand a bit more about that Data Cymru offer. I still think it would be useful for us to perhaps see the whole picture, because I think one of my questions from this was, we're kind of seeing some of the questions that are as part of that overall survey. I think it'd be good to see the full picture. And from what I've just read very quickly, there are some core modules of the Data Cymru survey, and we can contribute to that with additional questions if we wish as well. So there may be perhaps another piece of work there to look at the overall piece of engagement perhaps, but very much welcome this. I'm one of the members that has been sort of banging the drum in lots of different forums, and if this is going to be a cross-cutting, cross-service piece of resident engagement, I think it could be a really good opportunity. But if you could perhaps clarify if we're going to be able to see the whole survey, and perhaps if we're planning on putting in any additional questions or engaging beyond the core offer, that would be appreciated. Diolch.
Many thanks, Councillor Percy. Noelwyn, if you'd like to respond, please.
Yeah, diolch, Cynghorydd Percy. So absolutely, we can bring the full resident survey back to the Scrutiny Committee to have sight of all the questions being asked. It was we did take the report to Cabinet so they could approve that we went out to consult, and that's beginning on this Friday actually. But you are right, there's core models and there are additional models. So we will work with yourselves, because I think there will be a module there around yourselves as members and what the public view of yourselves as members. So we will obviously bring that back to yourselves as well. But in terms of what will be going out on Friday, we'll certainly bring that full suite back to you as scrutiny, but I'm also happy to share that with you beforehand anyway, so there's no reason why you don't have sight of that now. So we'll do that maybe after this meeting is finished, but if you feel that needs to be an agenda item which we can discuss further, Councillor Percy, we can certainly do that as well. Diolch.
Many thanks, Noelwyn. Back to you, Councillor Percy.
Okay, diolch. Yeah, no, that's great, and perhaps I need to check the Cabinet reports if there's something I've missed that's gone. So my next question is around the strategy's been restructured and some information is now vested in the business plans as referred to sort of in each section of the document. I'm just trying to understand the process of sort of producing, approving and scrutinising those business plans, because if some of the detail is now vested in those, to get the full picture, I suppose we need to see the overarching strategy and then the relevant business plan. And I'm just trying to get a bit of clarity of how that's going to work. I think we saw some business plans as part of our forward work programme preparation for my scrutiny committee, for example. But I'm not really sure where they're being reported to, whether they're going to come to this committee or not. So that would just be a useful point of clarity, just in terms of where some of that detail is going to sit.
Thank you, Councillor Percy again. Back to you again, Noelwyn, please.
Yeah, diolch, Cynghorydd Percy. So in terms of the way we've re-articulated the corporate strategy, what we ensured is that in terms of the aims that were in it and the strategic priorities that were in the transformation programme, what we've done is better articulated those within the current version of the corporate strategy. What we've undertaken then is to ensure that every head of service has a business plan in place, and that is aligned against the delivery of the wellbeing objectives and the aims. So, they will identify actions that they're taking in 25-26 to deliver against those 4 wellbeing objectives. And clearly the suites of measures will sit in the respective heads of service delivery plans. Each of those delivery plans will come before the relevant scrutiny committees. So they won't all come here, but they will go to the relevant scrutiny committees, because that's where the subject expert matters are and those members who are interested in those particular portfolios. And they will also be monitored via those scrutiny committees as well, like I said, on a Q1 and a Q3 basis, but then on a half-year basis and an end-of-year basis, you will get an understanding of how we are delivering overall on the current corporate strategy. So, like I said, yes, in answer to your question, they will come before the relevant scrutiny committees.
Thanks, Noelwyn. And back to you again, Councillor Percy.
Great, thank you. That's useful clarification. So just on some specific points within the strategy now. The first one, just on page 27, is a reference to play areas, and this is me just welcoming that. But me and Simon just had a brief chat about it as well, actually. Again, something we've been discussing for a while. I'm looking forward to sort of working with officers on dealing with that issue and helping deliver that across the county. I think what I wanted to pick up on that point and one other is that they both say subject to funding. Now, I feel that's an unnecessary caveat. If I'm honest, everything in this is subject to funding. The two things in the report that say it are play areas and active travel, which bizarrely are two things I've been trying to champion as a member. I get why it says it, but I'm not sure it's necessary. And I just wanted to make that bit of feedback, at this stage. It just feels like an unnecessary caveat.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Any comment, Line, please?
Yeah, so in terms of that particular, and it's a valid point, all of this is subject to funding clearly, but clearly the corporate strategy is aligned to our medium-term financial plan. I think in relation to playgrounds, there is nothing within our capital programme against play schemes, and therefore the reason that's caveated in that way, it does depend entirely on receiving external grant funding for those. So that's why the play areas are caveated in that way, because it's not part of our current capital programme at all.
Thank you, Nolan. Back to you, Councillor Percy.
Yeah, I suppose that it's external grant funding or allocating funding ourselves, I guess, is the point on that one, isn't it? I take that point, but likewise, active travel is externally grant funded, and we apply for that grant funding on a regular basis. It was just I'm perhaps less comfortable with the caveats on those, but take your point. My next question was, did you want to come in? Sorry. My next question was on page 32 in relation to libraries and the performance measure that was proposed for that. So the proposed performance measure is increasing book issues and download figures annually by 2%. And I just wanted to make the point really that, book issues isn't really the best performance measure for libraries in 2025. I mean, we kind of moved away from that a while ago in judging the value and performance of libraries. And I just feel that if we're going to have a performance measure, I think that's fine to have, but we should either have an additional one that reflects the community value of libraries and engagement with people. They're basically community hubs now, aren't they? So I think it's important to make that point, because I wouldn't want members to be making decisions or understanding the value of our libraries just based on book issues. I don't think that's great. And just on the same page, another measure is around increasing street cleanliness. And I'm just curious how we're measuring that. I know there's some national figures out there, but I don't know whether we're undertaking our own method of measuring. So 2 questions on performance measures there, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Percy. We'll bring Andrew Thomas in, please, first for the first one. Thank you.
Yeah, to respond on libraries, not street cleansing, definitely. It's a fair point to make, and actually, if we go back to the library strategy consultation last year, the top 5 reasons, the public consultation, the top 5 reasons people attend libraries, and it kind of bears out really what you're saying is borrowing books, safe welcoming space, support from library staff, place to find information, and place to meet people. So the point you make is well made, and that's recognised in the library strategy. But of course, collecting information, it's important that where anything we put in as performance measures is something that we can collect year on year, because obviously we want to see the trend. Having spoken to the chief librarian, we certainly can add in user numbers for our libraries. That's a reliable source of data, so that will give us a feel for the direction of travel in terms of, if you like, popularity. And we know, because we've been told, why people value libraries. So if we add that in, that's quite easily done.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, and I'm quite keen on that as well. I think that would be a good move. And the one on the cleanliness of the roads, please, Nolan.
I'd like to show off my diversity. However, I have received an answer from the service area. And Nicola Pierce does give her apologies as well. She couldn't be with us this afternoon. So in terms of the service, we've had this from Laura. They do have internal measures that they use to indicate street cleanliness. Each zone supervisor will undertake 1 cleanliness inspection per week and will provide a cleanliness score. That information is consolidated and compared to the Keep Wales Tidy statistics that they receive. it's probably worth noting that Keep Wales Tidy did undertake a survey on an annual basis up until 23-24, and then they decided to put a stop to it. I think it was due to funding. However, the team have been informed that there will be a new survey undertaken, a pilot in 25-26, and they're going to be referring to this as GLANS. Apologies, I can't give you what that abbreviation stands for, but certainly that is how they measure street cleanliness. So clearly they will already have the baseline data for previous year's performance. So that will be, when you see the monitoring reports, we will be, where possible and where it's available, we will be putting in previous year's performance as a benchmark for you. So when we say that the measure will increase, you know what the starting point is, and you will be able to see whether performance has increased or not. I think just on that point, if we can elaborate, and this is for, this is across the board, what will be important is, with that baseline data is, sometimes, we want to demonstrate continuous service improvement as an authority, but that clearly under financial circumstances is not always possible. And sometimes just standing still and delivering what we are currently delivering is good based on the fact that we might have lost capacity. But clearly it'll allow us to also demonstrate that where there are budget cuts made to services, then maybe you will see a decline in performance as well. So you have a more holistic view of performance, but we'll start with good starting points in terms of the benchmark data. I've elaborated slightly on the question, Councillor Percy, but hopefully that helps. Diolch.
Many thanks, Noel. I know it's not your area. Thank you very much for giving that. Would you like to come back in, Councillor Percy?
Yeah, so just on both. I take your point, Andrew, on libraries. I think it makes sense to use robust data that we can get. So I think visitor numbers is useful to just put in. I think that's fine. Because I wondered whether it was the Keep Wales Tidy data, Noel, that was being talked about. I think actually when you look at the resident survey questions here, that's probably going to be more valuable than any other data we can gather, which I think is going to be quite difficult to do consistently across the county. I think it's more valuable to get the feedback from residents actually on how they feel, and that's included within the survey. So I think that's fine. So appreciate that clarity. So my next question's again in relation to performance monitoring on page 38, which is around EV charging. So just wanted some clarity about what we were measuring there in that performance measure. I think it was a number of EV charging points, but was that council points, public ones, but private businesses? We're talking about home charging on the highway. We've talked about lots of different things. So I'm curious what it encompassed.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Noelwyn, back into you, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you, Cadeirydd. Yeah, so this refers to EV charging points on infrastructure that we own as a council. So that could be the quays, for example, but it could be our public-owned car parks as well. So where we have control, I guess, in terms of where those EV points go, that is how we will be measuring that increase in EV charging points, Councillor Percy.
Many thanks, Noelwyn. Are we okay with that, Councillor Percy? Any more?
Yeah.
Right, okay, keep going. Thank you.
That's okay, Chair. So my next one was on page 42, and there's maximising public transport is put there as an aim in the plan, but we don't have a corresponding performance measure for that. And given the importance of that, and I recall in a recent discussion, I'm glad this is in the sort of jobs part of the report actually, it was the number one issue for access to employment was transport that we're getting as a council. So I wondered if we could look at a measure. I mean, there's some things I could perhaps offer, which could be, for example, the number of bus hours of service on the network. We can track that and monitor that county-wide and even on a ward level basis through Brendan and the team. And it might just give us a way of having that overall picture. Is the network shrinking or growing? So I just wanted to offer that as a suggestion, really, around that.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. I'll again then, please.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point to raise, Councillor Percy. And I think, we've obviously put that question back to Brendan, and he's come forward with two potential measures. One was around, comparing the existing network performance, recovery against following the COVID, but then also comparing the new franchise network from 2027 to the current network. I think he'd welcome if you've got proposals around how we could introduce only a couple maybe of key measures in that will really give you a feel for whether we're moving in the right direction or that. So certainly we've got time to revise and put some really, one or two really good measures. So happy to take your suggestions on board, Councillor Percy. Diolch.
Many thanks, Noelwyn. As someone who's just received a bus pass, obviously this is a key one for me as well. Okay, thank you. Councillor Percy.
There we are, great. I'll perhaps have a chat with Brendan outside of this meeting and pick that up with him as well then. So two other final points from me then. One on page 46 was about the review of capital funding methodology. So just wanted to just welcome that actually and just make that comment. I know we've discussed that in several forums in different places and with politically and with officers. So just really welcome to see that in the report. And I suppose looking forward to seeing the outcome of that. I'm assuming that's going to come to this forum, and perhaps we can have a discussion between the chair and the cabinet member about when that might come. So the last point I wanted to make on that on page 46, and that was looking at sort of the kind of enabling program, and there's a line there around right number of people, right skills sort of line. I can kind of see where it's getting at. I wondered whether we might think about including or clarifying about bottlenecks in the organisation. I feel that just might be a nice way of focusing us a little because it is something that often comes up in scrutiny on various areas. When we're doing these, whether it's transformation programs, whether it's delivery of schemes, I think it might be a useful prompt for us to look at identifying organisational bottlenecks rather than necessarily just right number of people, right skills, because that maybe has a slightly more structural angle to it. So I kind of wanted to offer that one out as well. And then that's it for my questions then, Chair. Diolch.
Many thanks, Councillor Percy. Nolwenn, if you'd like to deal with Councillor Percy's last question, please.
Yeah, I think in terms of the observation made, Councillor Percy, I guess what the reference there is really, understanding where we've got greater demand and the capacity we've got to deliver that service, isn't it? And we need to be able to identify maybe where our fragile services are with regards to that point, and then just have a better understanding of that. So I certainly take your point on board. I think it's something that we can look at in terms of the future work strategy as well, as Sheena leads upon, to see how that fits in with that particular kind of right people in the right place kind of scenario.
Thank you, Nolwenn. Councillor Percy, you'd like to respond? Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose just one perhaps point of clarity on it is sort of maybe let's beyond that capacity point. I think it's understanding where certain service areas play that enabling role, isn't it? We've talked about it in IT and digital services. Now, a bottleneck there affects all parts of the council, delivery in all service areas. Likewise, another example that we've looked at, estates is a great one. All parts of the council have to do legal agreements and leases and those sorts of things and tenders, and it all goes through that one small part of the council and one little team. And we've got various parts of the council that act in that way, and that's slightly different from the capacity of a service, isn't it? Because the implications are wider. And I just wondered whether we should have just that little nudge of focus on those areas, just from a strategic point of view. That's all. I know we're all aware of it, but I'm always conscious that is slightly distinct to be in overcapacity in a service area.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Nolwenn, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, Diolch. I think, at the strategic leadership team, we've had that discussion around those kind of enabling services. And if you start eroding the capacity there, the impact is significant because it's across the whole authority, and it limits potentially in some areas their ability to deliver the services that they require to the public. So, I think when we bring our budget proposals, when we did brought them last year, we did have those conversations about trying to ensure that we protect the capacity within the service areas to ensure that we can deliver. And I'm sure we'll end up in that space again this year around the conversations that we need to have around that capacity. But I agree with the point you're making. You kind of erode the capacity in those central areas, and it does impact on the whole organisation.
Councillor Percy.
One final point, and I get where you're coming from on this, Noelwyn, in the way you've articulated it. But I think the point I'll make is there's protecting and not eroding, and then there's understanding where you need to enhance it. And I think that's the other point I'm kind of trying to make. I think we know the things that can't be cut anymore, but actually sometimes there's a case for investing in those areas to unlock potential elsewhere. And I think that's perhaps the thread running through my question. But yeah, I think the point's made now.
Many thanks, Councillor Percy. Obviously very thorough as always. Thank you very much for all your questions. We'll now give other members a chance if they would like to ask something. Anyone online? I knew Councillor Percy would cover most of it, to be fair. We have one. I got to say that we got Councillor Nathan Goldup John, I'll get it right in the end, who has requested to attend and speak today, and he did indicate which item on the agenda he wished to speak on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Percy's covered a lot of questions there, so I won't make this long, and it's not for officers actually. It's more for the leadership, if that's okay, Steve Allen. Brilliant. I'm glad to see this document is being set up. It's really clear what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to deliver, and there's clear measurables there. But rather unfortunately, I do think if you pick this up, this could be any local authority in Wales. You know, for instance, managing risk and community to light, managing flood risk in communities in light of extreme rainfall. That could be anywhere in Wales. Similarly, subject to funding, and that was a gripe I had, subject to funding, because the RTPs, I won't go into it, and I'll express my declaration of interest. I work for Transport for Wales just in case I need to, but the regional transport plans are being delivered up at the moment, so you could put it in there, and that's a funding mechanism. But however, what makes this plan unique to Neath Talbot and a desirable place to actually invest in, live in, work in, especially for people young like me, youngish, young and wanting to be here, because I can't really see that.
We'll bring in Deputy Leader, please, Councillor Llewellyn.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's an interesting point, I think, that Nathan makes there. And obviously, to a certain extent, the information that we need to include is sort of set out, you know, and one of the one of the things that I'm pleased about the change in the emphasis in this particular plan. You know, we previously talked about, you know, corporate plans and so on. And I mean, if there's anything that's guaranteed to make people snore, it's a document that's entitled corporate plan. But sometimes we have to use that terminology because there's a requirement for us to actually vote in that way. So I think that, you know, some of the information that's in there where we talk about the sense of place, where we look at the place plans that have been developed, where we look at the regeneration strategies that are being brought together. A lot of the ingredients are already there, but are now being pulled together so that it's, you know, far more understandable in our communities, and far more understandable for our own members, for that matter, and including us in the cabinet. So I think it's a matter of looking at the ingredients and applying those to the areas where we live, which are, you know, all the communities of Neath Talbot. So I mean, it's an interesting point that you make, and I think that we can probably look again at, you know, certainly around some of the introductory elements to you know, establish the uniqueness of the sense of place. You know, we look at the way that we have, you know, after years when the culture and tourism strategies, for instance, were pared back, you know, in a rather short-term approach. It's being reintroduced now. You know, the dramatic heart concept and so on, and I think, and we saw the success of that in the attention that our exhibitions drew at the other Eisteddfod the last week. So I think we are trying to encapsulate the sense of place around Neath Talbot, and I'm sure you know, any suggestions coming from Scrutiny about how that could be crystallised further would be looked at. But you know, one of the important things about the plan here is that it's being built by incorporating and consultation with the accountable managers. You know, it's not just a faceless document or something that sits on the shelf. It's actually, you know, reflecting the real work that's going on in these departments across the council on behalf of those communities.
Many thanks, Councillor Llewellyn. I think from my point of view, I think a lot of the detail about the localisation will be in the business plans more often than that. I think when we see you in the scrutiny committees, the business plans, I think the local detail will be in
under the overall strategy.
Thank you. And bring the leader in next, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I won't repeat what Alan has said, but you are right. I mean, most councils would have so many similarities of what they try to achieve, you know, and Neath Talbot tried to be unique, and it does reflect it within the corporate plan. You know, part of the corporate plan is children get best start in life, you know, community thriving, sustainable, you know, environmental culture. It all overlaps, but they all also sit in their own sections of scrutiny to pull together as a plan, and we aspire to a lot, isn't it? I'm not trying to pinch the words of a politician who's recently been in the news, aspiring to everything, but there's a lot in the plan. It goes up to 2030 now, isn't it? There's work ongoing. Officers are working exceptionally hard to pull this together. And I know the buzzword is the funding. And yes, even with active travel and everything else that we try to achieve, it does come down to a lot of funding that's needed to deliver. And that's why scrutiny is so important. This particular scrutiny and all the others, they'll form that basis of all plans that we try to deliver on. And as listening to council today, I think the conversations cross-party is critical, but sometimes you've got to prioritise as well. And we will all have a difference of an opinion on where our priorities lie. And it is difficult. It really is, You won't have any sort of false promises, certainly from myself or I'm sure Alan or the cabinet, but we do listen, we do take on board, and we respect what scrutiny members bring forward, and we try to respond in the best possible way. But officers like Noelwyn, Andrews, both Andrews and Nicola and Craig, they're all working with us to deliver, so feed into that plan, and I'm sure collectively we will get to where we need to be. But for us now, it's our choices in that way as an administration. But that doesn't mean to say that all members don't have a part to play, and they do, as you know, through the process that we follow. But yeah, it's sitting there. We need to. A last thing I say, Chair, sorry, is that for me, in a lot of meetings that I sit on now and chair, I get frustrated that we do so much by just scratching the surface of delivery, rather than maybe prioritising and seeing the outcomes from that particular, while or everything else that sits under it is still important, but try to sign off then in retrospect of something that's been delivered, rather than continuously having the same conversations or where we are. But what Arlene said is spot on as well. There's a lot happening, and we need potentially to do better. But it's not an easy place to be in the current climate either. But that's all I want to say. Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you, Leader. Nathan, I'd like to Councillor Goldup-John, sorry, if you'd like to come back in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Leader and Deputy. When I was in university, my dissertation was about governance, right? It's not the most sexy topic in the world, is it, governance? Some people find quite boring. But I do think there sometimes is a need to scream about the sexy nature of governance, right? Because governance delivers things. And I've written down 3 words that you kind of touched upon. Unique is definitely something we need to focus on and continue to sell ourselves. And selling ourselves is sexy, isn't it? Like, why you come into Neath Talbot? I know that's not the most professional word in the world, but I'm not the most professional person. We need to be a bit more sexy as a council, do you get me? Like, why are we coming here? And we need to be innovative. So I think if you can continue to just bang the drum about those unique aspects of Neath Talbot, innovative aspects of Neath Talbot, and yes, this document, whilst to some people it might not be sexy, I do think it is, but we need to scream about this too, because this delivers some of those aims, and maybe we can articulate that a bit better in the document and just make it a bit more unique about MPT. So thank you anyway.
Yeah, can I just quickly respond? I know you've got a lot on the agenda. There's nobody shouts louder than me because I'm a very loud person, but I think the aims that showcase what can be achieved. And it's important that you are right about sexy, and the media need to, sometimes look at what they say. When the steelworks was going through this very difficult time with Tata Steel, Neath Talbot, quite rightly, as you said, got so much going for it. And yeah, we need to make sure we are all on the same page when we shouted for Neath Talbot. So I only wanted to say I agree with what you said, Nathan.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Goldup-John. Oh, sorry, Councillor Llewellyn.
Yeah, and I do think it's a relevant point, because obviously, it's a very, very professional document, and a huge amount of work has gone into it. And, I can see that Noelwyn was hoping to go back in as well. And I don't know, perhaps it's something that we can look at, you know, either in terms of the current document that's in front of us, the current draft that's in front of us, or future iterations, you know, to look at that use of language and you know, terminology, you know, to look at that selling point perhaps a bit more, while obviously also being realistic about the constraints are on us, you know, because you know, there's no point in us sort of saying that everything is going to be absolutely fantastic until you know, unless we can demonstrate how we get to that point. Then, you know, but I think it's a relevant, very relevant contribution, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Llewellyn. Bring Noelwyn in. I think he's indicated he wants to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, diolch Cadeirydd. I think picking up on Councillor's point around governance, and somebody far wiser than myself once said that governance is about doing the boring stuff really well, because that's what allows you to be innovative and aspirational and ambitious as an authority. So I'd like to think that this corporate strategy strengthens our governance around greater accountability, the service use perspectives that we've referenced. Worth noting as well that, you know, and this is something that's been said at Scrutiny before, is that, you know, we will also be publishing a kind of a user-friendly version of this document. So this is a statutory document once it'll be approved, hopefully at Council on July the 9th. And therefore it does need to contain certain content in order to satisfy our statutory obligations. However, you know, what we want is that somebody, you know, one of our residents is able to pick up a document that very clearly articulates that they understand, I can see what Neath Talbot are doing for me as a resident. So we will be focusing on preparing, delivering that kind of user-friendly version of this that'll run alongside the statutory document as well. So hopefully that'll improve matters moving forward. Diolch.
Thank you, Noelwyn. Thank you, Councillor Nathan John. Clearly, your passion for the county shines through. And I think I'm sure that any ideas you've got, and not just from you, but from any members that can contribute to this, I'm sure going forward would be a good thing. Thank you. Are there any other questions, please? Okay, I can't see any indication. So we'll move to the recommendation then, okay? The recommendation is listed on page 7 of the agenda pack. I'm happy to propose it. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hinton. Can members please indicate if they wish to abstain?
I can see no abstentions, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Better turn over, get the wording right. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this recommendation is supported.
I can see no indications to the contrary, Chair, so the recommendation is supported.
Many thanks, Alison. On to agenda item 7. There are no urgent items this afternoon, you'll be glad to hear. Can I just conclude, before we finish, to thank all people who've contributed, particularly Councillor Percy, that is Sarah Delvin, and obviously to our officers, Andrew on his little one on the libraries, but to Noelwyn, who has been under the spotlight this afternoon. Many thanks all. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks all. Diolch.